Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another live recitation and live interpretation with the School of Smirk. Today, we're going to be reciting and interacting with Shakespeare's Sonnet number 116. The idea is, as briefly as possible, to come into a selfless interaction with the energetic variables and relationships that are themselves Shakespeare's unique thought embodied, between which arise irrefutably particular properties chosen by the artist to send a message to us. We come into this selfless interaction, this real consequential interaction with that which is particularly the embodiment of the unique thought of the artist in the present, and so bring the classics to life, bring them into real interaction with a unique self now in a unique moment in the future. And Today I'll come into my own interaction with that which, as irrefutably as I can, as definitely as I can, I find to be in the work. I'll come into an interaction with those and hopefully guide, inspire, inform others, you guys, on how one might most usefully come into an interaction with these very approachable works, these works whose project was to please. They're there for you, to use for you in the present. So let's start by reciting Shakespeare's Sonnet 116. He goes, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when alteration finds, nor bends to the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempest and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown, though his heights be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks between his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out until the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved." So that's Shakespeare's Sonnet number 116. Let's begin by let's begin at the beginning. So the first thing that is said is, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments." Again, what I'm going to offer you is what I see right now. I won't touch on everything. I won't explain or develop every idea. I'll lean into one thing more than the other because this is an interaction with myself as I am today, not yesterday, not tomorrow. And that's what's being encouraged. A selfless and so a unique, an invariably unique interaction, which treats the energetic variables, the abstract means that constitute the work, as being equal in reality, in realness. And this is what allows it to live. This is us giving it the breath of life to come into a real interaction now, an otherwise impossible one. So let's just go for it. So let me not to them, he says, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments." What we see immediately, we see marriage, which is a sacrament. So we see already there's a lean towards a discussion of something that has to do with like morality or religion, something that has to do where something in our discussion is, it has to do with union or and possibly sacred union. So there's a even a hint of that. In everything there's a choice. We can never assume that a master does not make an intentional choice. There's a spectrum of values, but we can never assume that he didn't think about, or whoever the creators didn't think about this. So we see that it's the marriage of true minds that he's interested in. We see then that there's different types of minds that he's discussing. He is alerting us to the fact that in his discussion, in whatever it is that he's talking about, in his field of interest, in his value, in as an important aspect of what's being passed, minds are of two natures. There's the true mind, and presumably then, by deduction, the false mind, or some sort of lesser mind. It's not the one that he's talking about. And from the very get-go of this, we're shown, let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. He says at some point in his experience, he's realized that he needs to go out of his way. He needs to create a work to clarify something which has gotten in the way, to clarify something which it has been shown to him could possibly, that is, his not clarifying it, could allow him to admit impediments to the marriage of true minds. He says, hey, I understand that if I don't make this work, if I don't pass this particular message about the larger message, if I don't clear up this thing, then I could get in the way of my true mind and your true mind unifying. So we see that he's going to clarify something for us in order to not make it possible, again, like to make it irrefutable, to make it not possible that something could get in the way of the marriage of true minds, or that the confusion about this particular aspect of the discussion, the larger discussion, let's say all of it, what all of his works pursue as a collective, pass. Then he goes on and he shows us what it is that he's clarifying. Love is not love which alters when alteration finds. So we see that in all of his works, which talk so much about love, which focus on all different types of love and aspects of love, and lovers of all different moments and types and circumstances, we see that. So we also know that love is a very important, relevant topic in whatever it is. It's a relevant aspect of whatever the major discussion is. And he shows us that love, like this word, this four-letter word, is not the one he's talking about. The love he's talking about is not the one that alters when alteration finds. And we see that immediately we're saying, okay, this is some type of love that, because it alters when alteration finds, that's a general statement. It never alters. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change when it finds other options. And all of a sudden, that's an unconditionality introduced right away. Nor bends to the remover to remove. And so we see that where there is love, there's a possibility of one attempting, for instance, if they alteration find, to remove themselves from this union. And we see that whatever type of love this is, whatever it's associated with, it doesn't bend to the remover to remove. That is, it doesn't condone the disconnective action. And I would like it is very, it seems very relevant to me that this bending to a remover to remove, this is a condoning of a disconnective action, or of a mind that isn't this true mind, letting its also not true, not love version of love create this discord or disconnect. And we see in that situation, that is where one, let's say one who loves, faces antagonism. If it's the true love, the love that we're talking about, clarifying the meaning of, so as to not admit impediments to this being understood. In the situation where there's one that holds this true or correct love, when the one that they love, again unconditionally, finds alteration and leaves, bends to remove, this one doesn't condone that. And immediately we see a calling back to the nature of forgiveness. That is, in the metaphysically informed understanding of the word, it is when one who unconditionally loves faces an antagonist, which can often be one that they love, faces antagonism from that one, and instead of bending to them to remove, instead of allowing them to do their disconnection, instead of following along with that, the one that unconditionally loves instead faces the antagonist, faces completely, and only gives and considers more to them, spends all of their energy attempting to continue to selflessly identify with this remover, even though it's an antagonistic thing, attempting to remove themselves. They give everything to them until they find another unique, particular way to identify with them, to understand why they might be driven to doing this, why they might be acting in this antagonistic, uh, uninformed way, unmetaphysically guided way, and having done so, finding their reconnection, finding a new means of identification with that person, they're able to be relieved from this sense of being removed from this sense of disconnect, from this sense of isolation. They regain their sense of union with all things, and so can move on, can continue to be themselves without condoning. They don't bend to the remover to remove. So without condoning, continuing to give love, that is, they face even antagonism. Or they face antagonism by continuing to give this love that's unconditional in the face of the remover and in the face of potential alteration. So, in order to avoid things being lost, to create a problem between true union of mind, again, this is his mind preserved in a work, his unique thought preserved in a work, coming into real interaction with our unique and ever-changing mind in the present, far beyond his physical life. And so we see that in order to make sure that we can truly unite selfless minds, the true mind, the metaphysically informed mind, the mind that's informed, that achieves what is overall being said by all of his works, in many different ways, for many different aspects, expounding upon and developing different facets of each part of this in universe-changing, redefining premise. We see that in order to allow us to avoid, in order for him to feel he's achieved his responsibility, he's done everything he could to be able to not admit impediments, he is showing us that this love is not one which alters with other options, nor does it alter in the face of antagonism. It doesn't condone these things. It doesn't do these things. And then he says, no, it's an ever fixed mark. So that it's something which never changes, an ever fixed mark. A way of looking, then. It's an ever fixed mark. It's a type of focus. It's a type of giving of the energy of thought. It's an ever fixed mark which looks upon tempests and is never shaken. So again, we find another instance that whatever this is, it's the self looking, casting out energy from the mind and the eyes, which has behind it, as its justification for this giving, something that could look out and see an antagonist, can see one being isolative or disconnected, removing themselves, can see alteration, other potentials. And in the face of all of these, it doesn't change. It's ever fixed. It's an ever fixed thing. That is something, the message being passed, the main idea, is something that allows us to justify looking into anything of any type, whether it's very good or very bad, anything of any type, state, or nature, whatever it might be, and to look at it. It's an ever fixed mark to always, that is, to perpetuate that complete giving, perpetuate that focus, that way of looking, and to know that all of these things, no matter what they are deserved of that same thing. So there's an unconditional giving which is perpetuated. When it's said it's ever fixed, or that it's never shaken, we can understand that, oh well, then this pertains to everything. So we see all of a sudden we see an unconditionality, but we also see an equivalence between all things of every type or appearance. So we see love isn't the one that alters. It doesn't bend in the face of antagonism. It doesn't shake. That is, it has something to do with fearlessness too. It's something that, whatever this is, whatever the love, which is a mark, something that looks upon things, it's not something that has fear. So for some reason, fear has been removed as well by whatever is being shown. So the love being talked about is agape, the Greek word for an unconditional or spiritually justified degree of love, an unconditional love, a love for everything of every type, state, and nature, no matter what. So then he goes on. It is the star to every wandering bark. An exciting metaphor, analogy, idea here. Um, the star, first of all, the star in particular is this phenomenon which, for everyone, even as our egos attempt to expand our inherently limited senses, extend them as far as we can, the star is and always has been and always will be. These stars will be this thing which is most indefinable, which yet we can all see. It's this instance, it's this phenomenon, it's this path to recognizing indefinability, unknowableness in our reality. It is, and that is, and so we see that love is that star. Love is this thing which is, we see that the love that's being talked about, this unconditional love presented by the agamic mother, um, most archetypally, is actually a guide. It's the star to every wandering bark. It's the thing upon and about and towards which or through which one can find its way. It is a useful instance of, I mean, unconditionality being shown, unconditional love being shown by anyone, acts as a guide to those who are seeking, the wandering bark. A guide to those who are seeking to say, hey, this thing exists. There's some reason why this exists. There's some reason why people can justify this. There is, if you experience unconditional love, you realize there is a value to that which is beyond our understanding or simple logical rational justification. That there's also a thing, an idea, some metaphysical premise which can instill in us unconditional love and allow us to autonomously perpetuate it. Um, yeah, so love is this ever available, the love we're talking about, the unconditional love, is this ever available marker that can help guide. It not only guides them by showing them it exists and that there's something that can justify this rationale, and also has its implications in unconditionality, um, but also that it is what is required in order for us to come out of seeking and wandering. So we must engage, we must attempt to use for ourselves this unconditional love in order to um, find our way, let's say. Um, okay, let's go on. So, next. So, love, it is the star to every wandering bark, whose worth's unknown. Its worth is unknown, though its heights be taken. This is very interesting, very telling, very specific language. Um, what we realize is, what we're shown is that, okay, this love, this unconditional love, which we're being shown, hey, guys, when I talk about love, he's showing us, when I talk about love, I'm talking about this specific one, not the one that alters when alteration finds, not the one that bends when there's a remover removing, not the one that looks upon something scary and says, I define that, I hate that, that's scary. No, it's never shaken, it's ever fixed, and it takes all different things like that and treats them equally, with an equal focus, with an equal giving of thought, an equal marking. Um, it is the thing that guides those seeking. It is an important manifestation and reflection of what we're seeking. And with all of that, its worth, that is, the value of this thing, is unknown. That's a property. He shows us whatever this thing is, Whatever this love is, its value, the actual worth of this, is unknown, even though its heights be taken. And inherent in that is a property. That's a very specific message about the nature of love and its part or role in this metaphysical process. What is that? That means, however, the way that this is used and intended to be used, the way that it's used that's relevant, that pertains to our conversation, is that it's given, unconditional love is given, its heights be taken, that it's achieved, it's and yet whatever is the product isn't a singular final product. Its worth, because it's been achieved, we see that even though it's achieved, click, I got one, click, I got B, click, I got C, click, I got D, it's achieved, its heights are taken, its worth is unknown. That means its worth is not from the individual instances of its achievement. What it's worth is that it can be used to produce endless amounts of value. The implication of the metaphysics being taught that is really presented very clearly by this is that this unconditional love, this selfless giving, results, this use of an evidence like a star of the indefinable, that we live in a reality where there's unknowableness, there's limitlessness in the indefinableness of each thing, and so there's justification for treating everything equivalently, for unconditional loving. We see that when we justify that, when we use the star as a wandering bark in order to be guided towards attempting that, we take its height. Its heights be taken. We take its height. We give the selfless love, and what we reveal is the value. That's the worth. What we reveal by that interaction, when we come into selfless interaction with the world around us, with anything, what we reveal is our irrefutably particular way of being related to that thing, a meaningful relationship, an identification, just like the one who does not bend to the remover has to make to the antagonist in the process of forgiveness. We when we give like this, um, we reveal what is often called unique light. We reveal, not often, what's called unique light in a lot of the literature, has something to do with light. So this is the meaning witnessed of that which we share, our meaningful identification with another. That way, the two of us are irrefutably particularly related when we come into selfless interaction by human choice to be selfless, using these concepts in order to justify selflessness. Um, when we come into this interaction, we allow the consciousness to witness the meaning, which is the thread of connection, the relationship between the self and the other, which is only that way in that moment. It's irrefutably particular and it's ever changing, which is why the worth is unknown. It's always going to reveal. Our use of this love that's being talked about is that we can perpetuate it. We have justification through the metaphysical concept to say, in the next moment, hey, I'm going to again give selflessly to this thing. I'm going to again praise and love unconditionally that same thing. And what happens is that we find another meaning. We reveal more. We again take its height and we find that there's more worth. In each coming moment, the way that we are irrefutably particularly related and therefore connected to all other things is changing, because all other things are changing. And so the value, the worth of the giving of unconditional love, of using the evidence of indefinableness in order to justify and reconcile infinity in our consciousness, and so justify coming into selfless interaction with all things, is that each moment when we take its height, when we do it, when we achieve selfless connection, we're going to reveal an irrefutably particular way of being related, our uniqueness. One example, one way of our uniqueness, one manner of our connection to all things, our irrefutably particular way of being connected to all things, which yet is ever changing as all things are ever changing. And so its worth is always unknown. The valuable product of this unconditional love is something which always changes, though its height to be taken. Even when we achieve it in one moment, the value of it is actually revealing in the next moment the new way, because that's our truth. Our truth is ever changing, our uniqueness ever changing, an ever changing way of being irrefutably particular and connected to all other things. And so in each moment, it's the revealing of that new meaning, which is actually of value. It's not the thing in itself, it's the fact that it's new, it's otherwise impossible, that nourishes us. It's this thing which shows us the way of our way of being connected now, a reconciliation and a redefining one. And as we are redefined, we gain meaning, we gain value, we gain purpose. As we're redefined in light of this newness being revealed to consciousness by choice to be selfless, so all things are redefined in light of that newness too. Um, Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks between his bending sickles compass come. In short, this love, this unconditional love, is not a time-based thing. This is we always and forever. Again, it represents unconditionality, a detachment from a certain amount of time. And also shows that, hey, however, it is related to sexual love. It's related to intercourse. It's related to this building of relationships or building of bonds, marital, um, familial bonds. This idea of rosy lips and cheeks being that there's also seasons, like our sexuality and our um, natural attractions and in our instinctive drives are related to this thing. In fact, it is our desire to mate that can bring us into unconscious, unintentional, unconditional love with another. That one which we find to be so fair and attractive, we helps us to identify with them. And when we identify with them, when their beauty to us, when our fascination with them drives us, allows us, without having such a premise, such a metaphysical concept justifying it, to be selfless in interaction, we receive more from them. We receive what we're seeking, this unique light. However, unconsciously, we didn't do it autonomously. We were assisted by their ease, our ease of identification with them. It's so easy to identify with the fairest beauty in the East who lives right next door to you and has always been there and speaks the same language. Of course. And that attraction and even that symbolic union is very related. It is related. It is selflessness leading to um, nourishment by the revealing of unique light. It, it is not only that, and that the idea is that we need to use that. We need to see that as evidence and try to understand through that. Well, where's the value here? It's not in the individual beloved. It's in the fact that it's in the fact that we were somehow able to become selfless and so to be so nourished and therefore to unconditionally love them, to continue to perpetuate them. And yet, as time goes on, we lose that ease of identification with them. And so we're shown that, hey, this this is relevant. What happens at the beginning unconsciously is what we want to happen. However, the one that we're talking about is the use of a concept so that ease of identification doesn't fade. So we gain autonomous control of that um, valuable condition. Um, yeah, and then we say, yeah, love alters not with its brief hours and weeks, but bears it out to the edge of doom. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but this doom comes up. This idea, the edge of doom, comes up often in the sonnets. It's a theme throughout his that pervades his works, and I would say that he makes a comment on the nature of human consciousness. That this is for the human consciousness as it is on Earth, and that all of this entire effort, is with it considered that our consciousness as it is, and which all of this work and which any useful metaphysical message pertains to, will cease to exist and at one point did not exist. Doom is the edge of the meaningful worlds. It's the end of doom for Shakespeare is the end of the human particular psychological condition which qualifies all such messages as good, which required the creation of gods and spiritualities and mythologies. The edge of doom is when we no longer are human particular, when this is irrelevant, which can be from natural disaster or it can be from a inability to an overall loss of the engagement of our human particular psychological conditions of infinity and uniqueness somehow. And then he gives his final statement. Always lines 13 and 14 in this form are the final brushstroke that brings the picture together. We see that they are so informed by all the meaning developed up until them, and that they also redefine and reinform and unite all of the things that have been said so far. So he says, if this be error, and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved. Which is a hugely powerful statement for us that really has such effect on what we've theorized so far. If this is error, and upon me proved, so he says, like, if I'm wrong, and it's proved, then I never writ, nor no man ever loved, and we all know that he writ because we're reading it. That's why this is happening. And no man ever loved, and we know that they have. So he gives you it's a definite that it's not. How can it be? He shows us that we have to figure out how can it be that there's no way that this is wrong. And so we see that if this be error and upon me proved, we see that then there's a bunch of impossibilities. That he never writ, which we know is not the case, nor no man ever loved, which is not the case. It's why the discussions happen. We also see really quickly that he is this love. He shows us that he is the thing he's talking about. He is the words that he's using. He is the embodiment, and this work is the embodiment of this message. So that pertains to I never writ. If this isn't true, if you don't get it, it was never Shakespeare that did it. Shakespeare is the one that writes where this isn't error, where this can't be error. And here's the idea is that if this be error and upon me proved. And what we see is that if one proves that unconditionality is error, if one proves that this is error, then they have missed both Shakespeare and love. The idea is that this thing being talked about has something to do with provability, or a lack thereof. Unconditional love, unconditional giving, and the metaphysics that justify it and allow us to autonomize it have nothing to do with proof or something like this being error. If it is proved to be error, then Shakespeare wasn't here doing this. You missed the thing that is him. You missed the light that is himself. You missed the unconditional love. And the real love that we're talking about never happened. You don't know about it. What we see is that he shows us, because we know he writ and we know that man has love, that this can't be error and be proved. And we see that what this shows us is that it is not proof which leads to unconditionality. It's like the star, instances of indefinableness or unknowableness, limitlessness or boldness, duality, which are the manifestations of our in our reality that we ever take account of as humans, which can show us that there is infinity, there is limitlessness in our reality. It's part of our context. And it is when we see that we can justify in ourselves, when we consider the implications of that we could start to justify in ourselves this unconditionality, this unconditional giving, this unconditional love of all things of any type, state, or nature, whether it looks ferocious or terrible, or whether it looks antagonistic and disconnective and isolative, or whether it looks like another option, a better or worse thing. We have this unconditional giving to all things, and um, which we gain an autonomous path to when we hold the concept. And so the idea is that if you could prove something, if you could prove something that really has nothing to do with what we're talking about, what he writ, and when there has been true love, this never had to do with proof. Proof is inconsequential. In fact, the proof is in the pudding with all of this stuff. That is, it's when you somehow um, achieve what he's writing about, when you figure out the message, when you figure out this other type of love, um, or a path to justifying it, all you've done is you've used indefinability. You've used what inherently cannot be proven. That is the very point. That indefinableness or unknowableness in the star, um, in the potential of others, the ever-changing worth. What's worth's unknown, those heights be taken. This ever-changing, nourishing, reconciling way of being connected to the universe, which is always changing. It's always new. Um, the value in this, the value in all of these things is that they're indefinable. And this indefinableness being a manifestation of infinity can allow us to justify interacting in a way which reflects awareness of that. And so it's when we have, let's say, a star, and that indefinableness can lead us, especially with metaphysical guidance like his, can lead us to justifying acting in this way, which is unconditionally loving, which is the most value. That's what brings about the value. That's what brings about the worth. That is us taking its height, us being guided to take the height. It's when you try to. It's if you did prove it. If you disproved a paradox, you said no, we can actually figure an answer out for this. If you took something which was the place where one hand meets another hand, and there's that one place. Where does one thing begin and the other end? That indefinable place in between the two, the place where one thing meets and the other meets, and you just can't quite ever identify exactly that point where um, that's a moment of indefinableness. When exactly is being awake and falling asleep? There's that one moment in between, that one moment which we can never define. If you know, and so if you try to control things, if you try to define and limit things, if you try to say, okay, well, there's that star, we're sending the ship out, we're going to find exactly what it is. All you do by proving is you remove that one instance of the endless instances, manifestations of infinity and indefinableness and uncontrollableness, whatever they are, unknowableness, duality, bothness, paradox. You just remove that one, which has nothing to do with what we're doing. It just removed one path to the real psychological effect of considering this nature in things, this limitless nature in things, which we've always taken account of. Provability, we see, is what he is. It is what he writes, and it is man, humankind, truly loving. The love that he's talking about. If it's proved by you as error, if all this stuff is proved by you as error, it means that the thing that he's talking about, what he wrote, and all of love, the human particular potential for love, is lost. Because provability is something that does not understand this. Provability simply removes one of our many options. If you go and you say, hey, here, you're telling me that that's wave-particle duality, I'm going to disprove it. All you have is removed one of the endless ways that we can see the indefinableness that exists in our reality, which can lead us, can help us to justify infinity, reconcile infinity in a uniqueness marked consciousness. And so understanding its implications, come into the state of mind, the real psychological effect in the subsequent state of mind, which allows us to autonomously, selflessly give to other things, to unconditionally love, the love that he talks about, to give our true mind to other true minds, and so to be nourished by way of the message being taught. Thanks for joining me for a live recitation and interpretation of Sonnet 116 by William Shakespeare.